Coming up, scientists warn global average temperatures could spike within the next 4 years. We discuss the chilling predictions for our heating planet, what we face at 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2 degrees, 3, and more. What do you think happens with that 0.2 degree rise that takes us to 1.5?
We have to expect that this will happen and that further extreme events will show up.
Australian Indigenous communities demonstrate an alternative way to put out forest fires.
Indigenous people actually burned for years, didn't they? And keep control of the fires, and it stopped all the fires.
But first, strong resistance to police and their water cannon. Thousands protest in The Hague against government fossil fuel subsidies.
We are here because it's much larger than only one of us.
This is just 2 degrees on TRT Wood. A problem so big, it concerns the entire world, everyone and almost everything living on it. An existential crisis that climate protesters say is worth putting their life on the line for this and future generations. Oh, intense, right? Well, at this demonstration, several thousand people blocked a highway in The Hague, Netherlands, that heads to the Lower House of Parliament. They said they'd keep protesting there until subsidies for industries that use oil, coal and gas are lifted. And they promise to return every day, even if the police remove them.
We're currently at 1.2 degrees heating. We're facing 3 degrees heating. Our government is supposed to protect us. Instead, they subsidize the fossil fuel industry, the fuel sector responsible for the climate crisis that we're in, with 37 billion a year.
So we are here because it's much larger than only one of us. This concerns the whole earth, whole humanity, but also plants, animals. This is at the point, as we saw last summer, where we are tilting, situations got worse.
We've seen over the past year that it can be a dangerous job defending the planet. Activists have been hit, kicked, even run over by vehicles. But in Colombia, it's considerably worse. The number of environmentalists murdered there doubled last year. According to human rights group Global Witness, their latest report revealed 177 people were killed while taking a stand to defend human rights, the land and the environment. Colombia is currently the most dangerous place for planet protectors. Colombian sociologist and activist Nadia Umana fled her home after 4 of her colleagues were murdered. They've all been fighting for the return of rural lands that were taken over by paramilitaries.
Defender el medio ambiente, defender la naturaleza, defender la tierra, defender los derechos básicos, lo que sostiene la vida, las bases de la vida misma. Aquí en Colombia eso es una profesión de riesgo, la sensación de vivir constantemente con la certeza de que así como mataron a tus compañeros te pueden matar a la vuelta de la esquina. Eso no es vida, eso no es algo que nadie debería vivir. Entre el noviembre de 2021 y agosto de 2022 nos asesinaron 4 vocerías. Una local, una regional y las 2 nacionales, que hay un ataque sistemático a la organización. Nosotros hemos documentado casi 100 vulneraciones a los derechos humanos de nuestra organización desde el 2019 a hoy. Entre incursiones de grupos armados sin identificar, entre incursiones de grupos paramilitares.
The planet's warmed by around 1.3 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels so far. But according to the World Meteorological Organization, there is a 66% likelihood that the annual average near-surface global temperature between the years 2023 and 2027 will be more than 1.5 degrees Celsius for at least 1 year. But how does that affect us? I mean, we're already experiencing longer droughts, more powerful storms, warmer winters in some areas, and hotter summers. But scientists warn things are about to get a whole lot worse. If the average global temperature rises by 1.5 degrees, there'll be more coastal and river flooding, heat-related morbidity and deaths, and an increase in the spread of tropical infectious disease. Crossing the 2-degree threshold would mean major changes in the Arctic region, with a substantial loss of sea ice. There'd also be a major increase in extreme weather events and significant impacts on polar regions, wetlands and mangroves. There'd be a decrease in crop yields, and the residents of tiny coastal nations like the Marshall Islands, Tuvalu and the Maldives would be forced to evacuate, becoming climate refugees. Things get incredibly dicey above 3 degrees Celsius. It's predicted many species will become extinct. All coral reef systems will die. In the summer, there'll be no sea ice in the Arctic, and the majority of mountain glaciers will disappear. Food and water security will become major humanitarian issues, and environmental forced mass migration will increase exponentially. Getting closer to 5 degrees would mean catastrophic loss of ecosystems and species across the world. Coastal cities will have to be abandoned because of drastic rises in sea levels, and that's because melting of the western Antarctic and Greenland ice sheets will accelerate. In many countries, summer temperatures will stay persistently above 40 degrees. Heat waves with temperatures in the 50s will be common, and global food production will plummet, leading to widespread malnutrition and starvation. So is that where we're heading? No doubt it will be unbearable to live on parts of a planet with 50-degree summers. Stefan Rosner is here to discuss this possibility. He's head of the Division Regional Climate Monitoring at the German Meteorological Service. Hi there, sir. It's good seeing you. So we've seen since the Industrial Revolution until now, the planet has warmed by about 1.3 degrees. We've seen the ramifications of that. What do you think happens with that 0.2 degree rise that takes us to 1.5? How different will things look?
We are quite surprised to see so heavy extreme events today already. So just at 1.1 to 1.3 degrees temperature excess compared to pre-industrial levels. And so that doesn't seem to be too much, 0.2 degrees more, but we have to expect that this will happen and that further extreme events will show up. And this year, in 2023, we have seen unprecedented high ocean temperatures, not predicted to occur already at this time of the century by any of the climate models. The global average temperatures in summertime have been much higher than also predicted and unexpected. And there's another activity going on. The Antarctic sea ice is at a very low amount, also not predicted by climate models. So 0.2 degrees seems not to be too much, but we all know that that the thresholds of severe impacts is much lower than previously thought.
The World Meteorological Organization also said that El Nino has a significant impact on the predictability, the possibility that we will rise to by 1.5 degrees Celsius within the next 4 years or so. Do you agree?
Yes, I'm pretty sure that we will exceed the 1.5 limit at global scale within the next 5 years, or let's say 10 years. Within the next 10 years, maybe more than one time. However, the IPCC figure of 1.5 degrees Celsius means an exceedance over a longer period, at least 10 to 20 years on average. So a single year does not mean that we are beyond the thresholds being discussed in the IPCC context. But nevertheless, looking at the emission scenarios and then the emission data we receive from the countries, we are on track to pass the 1.5 even by IPCC definition terms, at least for a while, before we might return below this limit.
Yeah, the WMO also said that up until the year 2015, there was nearly 0% chance we'd exceed 1.5 degrees between the years 2023 and 2027. But from 2017, that percentage steadily rose to 10%, And in May this year, there's now a 66% probability that we will go to 1.5 degrees Celsius before 2027. It seems almost as though we're deliberately accelerating global warming. Have no scientists' warning been heeded at all, do you think, by enough governments in countries that are major polluters, you think?
It's difficult. I think the scientists have been warning for a long time, and if we look back at the early predictions made by IPCC in the 1990s or last century, we have to recognize that the observations are pretty much along those predictions which have been made for the business as usual scenario. And that's also why we have to be quite sure, or we need to be quite sure that the future will also follow those worst case scenarios. Yeah.
This is more of a philosophical question. You know, human beings, and of course, the heads of governments and the heads of major corporations that are major polluters are human beings as well. We normally change our course, our way of our actions, our course forward based on trauma. So I'm guessing these people who are in positions to make choices that benefit the planet have not experienced trauma enough to make them change course? Or do you just think money is such a driving factor here that they don't care about the consequences at all?
No, I don't think they don't care. But no government is making its decisions independently in an empty space. All governments are bound to trade systems, and it's a challenge for them to remain competitive while investing in climate-friendly technologies. That's quite costly. And still, the people need to be convinced that this is not just a risk to transfer the economy, but it's an opportunity. And that's mainly a communication problem also. So far, we have been looking very much at the science, at the natural scientists. But nowadays, I think it's more important also to look at psychologists and socioeconomic aspects of making the changes and transitions that are necessary happen. We do have the technologies, we do have the knowledge, and it looks like as if it is a minor step to come to action, but it's more complicated, I would say.
You know, plant eaters, vegans, vegetarians always talk about the fact that the coal, oil, and gas industries account for about more than 75% of greenhouse gas emissions, 90% of carbon emissions. And they say that animal agriculture, which accounts for about 16% of greenhouse gas emissions, that animal agriculture could be a way that us as regular people, you and me, can actually reduce global warming. Do you agree that just cutting out animal products, that we should just stop supporting this industry to reduce global warming?
If we would cut this off, that might have an impact, but any emission reduction will have an impact. Anyway, even if we cut emissions now immediately, it will take a couple of years, up to several decades, before the global average temperature, will see a downward trend. So it's not that quick successes that can be attractive for politicians to take decisions which are not very well taken by voters, for example. On the other side, I think there's a good method to include the price of CO2 emissions and make a price tag on those emissions, on meat and any other fossil fuel-based product. So far, users of those products do not really pay the full amount they would need to pay if you take into account the damage CO2 fossil CO2 emissions are really causing. And we are far away from a realistic price. That figures of several hundred euros per ton of CO2 that would be equivalent to the damage CO2 is causing.
You know, this information that we're on path to cross not just 1.5, but 2, possibly 3, has been circulating social media for a while now. There's even speculation about what would happen to the planet between 4 and 5 degrees rise Celsius, which of course would result in unknown but catastrophic damage. Based on our current trajectory, Stefan, where do you think we're heading by the year 2030? And an extension 2050?
I'm pretty sure that we can stay, I'm quite confident that we will stay beyond 3 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. I think there are sufficient measures in place to limit warming, certainly below 3 degrees Celsius. But 3 degrees is still much too much. Even 2 degrees Celsius should be avoided. On the other hand, those processes are non-linear processes. This is something we are all thinking in linear ways, but it's exponential. So that's my hope, that also the transition process eventually be an exponential function, and that a slow start, which we are still seeing now, will lead to an increased transition in the future. By mid of the century, I would expect to have seen several years in a row, possibly also exceeding 1.5. And the damages you've seen in Greece and in Libya now, that won't be the last ones. There might be years without so much damage, but there will be years with much more damage. And we are now heading towards an El Nino period, which will cause to rise the global average temperature by quite an amount, because that's a huge area. This is which is above average in the Western Pacific. So all this will lead to additional and new extreme events, and this, on the other side, will force politicians to take action. But everybody can take action and makes a decision. If you buy a car, you decide which car to buy.
Of course.
If you install a heating system in your house, you decide which one.
I appreciate that. It was a real pleasure speaking with you, Stefan. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
One of the deadliest side effects of climate change is becoming all too common across many parts of the world, wildfires. But the residents of Belan Cliffs village in northern New South Wales, Australia, is learning how to fight fire with fire. They're using techniques long known by Indigenous peoples to conduct what's called cultural burning, or deliberately setting fires on landscapes according to a plan using controlled lines at lower temperatures. They burn small patches of crowded vegetation, slow enough to allow animals to escape from the heat. The techniques reduce fire hazards, create pathways, and facilitate the growth of native plant species and wildlife.
You know, the land is teaching us that we are not paying attention. Logging and clearing and fossil fuels and the destruction that we've done on the land and what we put up into the atmosphere, it's coming back on us. And that's why it's so important that we get people back on the country and learning how we can heal the land, bring the fire back, bring the trees back, look after the waters and the river, and get more functional, healthy systems, because not only will they be better for us, cleaner water and air and safer places, they'll also be more resilient to changes in the climate, which we're going to have more. You know, we're seeing big changes.
We need help with this land, you know. I mean, so many people aren't active on the land anymore. They're not sure what to do. They're not sure how to bring back biodiversity or protect themselves from fire. So those were all a part of it as well. We also have a big weed burden on this property. And so part of my engagement was looking at if we could really match some cultural burning with some weed eradication and some biodiversity enhancement to really knit all those things together.
It's part of life, you know, it's part of the Australian bush that burns. And you've got to be on top of it. We are. They have Indigenous people, they used to burn it for years, didn't they? and keep control of the fires, and it stopped all the fires. But now, a lot of people said we've got a lot of landowners that don't want to burn anymore, and that's caused a lot of problems, in these fire seasons.
Well, California sees thousands of fires every year, which destroy hundreds of thousands of hectares. And now they've started using artificial intelligence to scan for danger, and it's working. Well, thanks to the new AI system, firefighters can spot and contain blazes before they get out of hand. The program uses over 1,000 cameras throughout the state and can control them remotely. The California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection has been running a pilot program since early July, and they say it's efficient. They anticipate the technology will serve as a prototype for other states and countries.
The AI component is allowing us to, instead of having somebody physically at the camera all the time trying to scan the cameras to see if we have anything, the AI is actually doing that for us. So they're scanning the horizons and seeing if there's smoke or potential fire or potential trouble spots that we can be alerted to take a look at or see if we need to get a response going prior to getting any 911 calls on it. Basically, it's giving us a 24/7 eyes in the area for us. When people aren't out and about watching or majority of the population is sleeping, it can pick up things that somebody may not see for a while that can potentially be devastating if it's not caught early. So it's definitely helping us out and helping us catch things sooner than later and helping us mitigate things quicker.
The AI is a tool that is looking for something specific that might be smoke. It's all it does. It doesn't sleep, it doesn't eat, it doesn't do anything but scan every camera to look for smoke. We beat 911 calls about 40% of the time, and it's going to get better. The future is very promising because now we're having more people teach it, more data. Machine learning and how AI works is based on the quality and the quantity of data it can ingest so that it knows what smoke looks like and the varieties of smoke. Our success is this. We're successful when you don't even hear about the fire because it was suppressed. Okay, so that's our success metric, is the fires you never hear about. I think that as we see these devastations in other areas, like in Greece and Maui, that systems like this that provide early confirmation will be a step in the right direction.
And then hopefully that will help us get even, 10 to 15 minutes faster response, even if it's that minimal, it could be up to a 3 hour faster response to an incident or a fire location that we can hopefully put out in less than 10 acres. I think that California can be a role model for the rest of the world for the camera systems and the technology that we are using in fire to help make it safer for everybody.
Well, 9 island states took an ocean protection case to the United Nations Maritime Court in Germany under the law of the sea. The landmark case aims to preserve the islands from rising sea levels. They want the court to determine if carbon dioxide emissions absorbed by the oceans can be considered pollution. The case also examines high-emitting countries' obligations to protect the marine environment. The Commission of Small Island States Prime Ministers urge protection of marine environments from greenhouse gas emissions under the UN Law of the Sea. States include Tuvalu, Vanuatu, the Bahamas, and Antigua and Barbuda.
Well, we're literally suffering from all the consequences. So, for example, we have droughts, we have had floods, we have seen more ferocious and frequent hurricanes, heat waves, bushfires. We have even lost a part of our coastline as a result of sea level rise.
We cannot look away from the devastating consequences of climate change. The core belief that has animated this case from the start is that international law has some answers here. International law can play a critical role in finding solutions.
So the World Health Organization and the World Wildlife Fund are sounding the alarm on the impact of our meat consumption in our diet. They've cited a study that links how much meat we eat to global warming and say that on average humans eat 20 to 25% too much meat. But they're also offering advice on what we should eat, saying it's better for our health as well as for the planet.
Pourquoi un lien entre la consommation de viande et le réchauffement climatique? Il y a deux liens en fait. D'une part parce que souvent le bétail qui n'est pas élevé à l'herbe, notamment le bétail ruminant, il faut cultiver sa nourriture. Et pour cultiver sa nourriture, il faut de la place. Il faut de la place, il faut donc la prendre, cette place, sur des zones humides, des prairies, des forêts, beaucoup. Et puis il faut des engrais, il faut des pesticides parfois, etc. Tout ça consomme d'une part du carbone des forêts, d'autre part du carbone pour les intrants, ce qu'on appelle les intrants, ce qui rentre dans les cultures.
And that was our show. Before we go, here are visuals from Ethiopia's newly completed Grand Renaissance Dam. Its main source is the Nile River, which was a serious dispute between Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt. The parties believe the dam will cause water security problems, while Addis Ababa denies that claim.